one of the things that we want to communicate to students entering is how they can become involved in research with faculty members while they're here. It's one thing to be taught, it's another thing to be mentored. So you want to strive toward developing the kind of excellence that the professors are going to include you in their lab, which is very characteristic of Tufts. In Sarah's and my case, neither of our departments, sociology nor political science, have graduate programs. We don't have PhD students to work with us. So we used undergraduates in this book. We probably had somewhere between 10 and 12 undergraduates who worked over the course of 5 years with us. And they were instrumental. Yeah. And they provided ideas. They weren't just people that we sent to the library or put on the computer to do things. They were in a room with us talking about the project, and they helped to design it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a lot of interesting and really valuable work with us, and we met once a week and felt like a real team as we were gathering the data. So they coded all those shows to see, is there misrepresentative exaggeration, is there mockery? They did a lot of that legwork, so did we, but they contributed to that. And I definitely am still using students on my current research. I think you are too, Jeff.
Yes, I have a student who works for me this summer, and she's been a collaborator, not just an assistant.
Yeah, so I have 2 students who are working on my current project, and one that we're co-writing a paper together. So there's lots of opportunities. You should definitely not be shy, and in addition to just doing a great job in class, which faculty always notice, to come and visit and express interest in research. One of the students that works for me now, I thought of her when I needed somebody because she had said so many times that she really wanted to try out research, and so she came to mind. Another thing I often find students don't realize is that for faculty at Tufts, doing research is just as important to our day-to-day lives as teaching. So a good thing you may find interesting would be to ask a faculty member what they're working on in terms of their research, because they're always doing something, and it's usually related to the classes that you're taking with them because that's their area of expertise, right? So we do spend a lot of time teaching and working with students. We do sit on a lot of committees and go to a lot of meetings, too many meetings. And we do a lot of research where we're gathering our own data and writing it and publishing it.
Tufts is a research university. We're not a small college, and that's part of the reason why the university is prestigious, is because of the faculty publication. So you may not consider the university or think of it in such explicit terms, but we are evaluated in terms of professional advancement by research. Teaching is rewarded here, it is important, and they are integrated, very much so.
One of the things that concerns me the most as someone who's spent a ton of time listening to and thinking about this is the way that we've flattened the other side. So instead of something instead of hearing someone you disagree with and thinking that you don't like that policy idea or that that's not the way you would approach it, we have started to see the other side in this sports team kind of way, where they're not just not having your same preferences. They're bad people who are either incompetent, stupid, malfeasant, and I think when you do that and you assume that people who don't agree with you are flawed in this deep way, you stop trying to engage them and you stop giving them the respect that they deserve as human beings, because we do all have different ideas about what is good and right. And so I think one of the greatest issues is that it becomes really difficult to build bridges, to talk, to hear what other people are saying empathetically. People aren't striving to understand people who disagree with them anymore. They're striving to be understood. I want you to hear me is more important than I want to hear you. And I think that if we don't have that kind of empathy and interest in our fellow, community members, that becomes a real problem at the lived everyday level.
That's so important, the coarseness and the vilification of the other side. And as a political scientist, I can tell you that there is a lot of data that demonstrates that what you feel, that America is becoming more polarized, is really true. We really are a divided nation at this point, liberal versus conservative, and we do despise the other side. And that makes it difficult to compromise. It makes it difficult to compromise in Congress. As we've seen, the Republicans in this current session want to do everything by themselves because they have majorities. I think Americans want, a lot of Americans anyway, when pushed, say, yeah, you know, you need to compromise, even though they vilify the other side. And we've moved away from really creating incentives for politicians to be compromisers. And we need some people in the middle that tie together both sides, and that's becoming more difficult because of the outrage industry.
The other thing that I think is deeply concerning from a Democratic standpoint is that with this sort of sports team mentality, it's always a game, and it's about who's winning and who's up and who's down. And what gets lost there is quality information and being able to recognize quality information, right? That's why people are talking about fake news and calling news fake, whether it is or isn't. And I think at the end of the very base level for democracies to be legitimate, you have to have adequate information to make informed decisions on your own behalf when you enter the voting booth. And if this gets in the way of that, then sort of the things that we hold most dear as, you know, Americans are really jeopardized, right? The democratic system itself.